Hey everyone, as I did with Phases 1 and 2 of Classic WoW, in this video, what to expect in Phase 3, I'm going to cover the following bullet points. I provided timestamps in the description below, so feel free to skip around if you'd like to view something specific. So, without any fluff, let's get right into it. Darkmoon Faire. The Darkmoon Faire is going live on Monday, February 10th, and will last until Sunday, February 16th, taking place in Mulgore. One thing that I forgot about the classic version of the Darkmoon Faire is that the location of the fair alternates each month. In retail, the Horde can access it in Mulgore, while Alliance get to it right outside of Goldshire. But in Classic, the location of the fair switches between Mulgore and the Elwyn Forest. That doesn't mean if you're Alliance you can't access it in Mulgore, you can. You'll probably have an easier time as Alliance getting to the Mulgore location than Horde trying to access the Elwyn Forest location. That's because the Alliance Darkmoon Faire entry is very close to Goldshire, with the potential of guards spawning. As we saw in the beta of Classic WoW, those guards can spawn relentlessly. So if you're Horde, exercise caution when trying to access the Darkmoon Faire. I'm sure this will be a hot spot on PvP servers. Now, there's 100 videos going over the specifics of the Darkmoon Faire, how to acquire tickets and reputation and all that, etc. And I usually reference WOWHEAD guides for that. Just to quickly go over for the sake of including it in this video, one of the biggest things coming from Phase 3 with the Darkmoon Faire are the cards that will begin to drop. And guess what? These cards are actually available in-game already, so you could start collecting these cards now. You'll have the ability to collect a potential of 4 different decks, which can all be turned in to create a trinket. Here's a table I created that goes over which cards create which trinket and how to find the ace. The ace is the only card that could drop off specific mobs, whereas the rest of the cards, 2 through 8, are random world drops. The individual cards are not BOP, however, so if you are missing a certain card, you could check the auction house to see if one is up for sale. And don't forget to check the neutral auction house too. So to quickly go over this, the Beast deck turns into the Darkmoon card Blue Dragon. The Darkmoon card Blue Dragon equip is a 2% chance on successful spell cast to allow 100% of your mana regeneration to continue while casting for 15 seconds. And the Ace of Beasts drops from the Beast in Upper Blackrock Spire. The Elementals deck turns into Darkmoon card Maelstrom, and the equip chance is chance to strike your melee target with lightning for 200 to 300 nature damage. And the Ace of Elementals drops from various endgame elemental dungeon bosses. There's Avalancheon, Princess Tempestria, the Windreaver, Baron Char, those are all from the elemental invasions in the open world, and Lord Incendius and Hydrospawn. So all of those elemental bosses have a chance to drop Ace of Elementals. Next is the Portals deck, which turns into Darkmoon card Twisted Nether. The equip gives the wearer a 10% chance of being able to resurrect with 20% health and mana. So kind of like a Self-Soul Stone or Ankh, as long as you keep the trinket equipped. It does need to be equipped for the chance of this effect to happen. The Ace of Portals drops from Darkmaster Gandling, who is the final boss in Scholomance. And the fourth deck is the Warlords deck, and that turns into Darkmoon card Heroism. The equip sometimes heals the bearer of 120 to 180 damage when damaging an enemy in melee combat. And the Ace of Warlords drops off King Gordok in Dire Maul. Another big thing that I want to mention about the Darkmoon Faire are the buffs that you can acquire from a fellow named Sayge. Straight from the Blue Post, written by Blizzard, Sayge is described as a fortune teller. Life is full of mystery and wonder. No two adventurers' tales are alike. Seek out Azeroth-renowned fortune teller Sayge to discover your future. After answering 2 of Sage's questions, you will receive a powerful buff based on your responses. So basically, depending on how you answer Sage's questions, you'll receive a different buff. One of the notable buffs is a 10% damage buff from Sayge that lasts for 2 hours. That can absolutely boost the overall damage of your raid if all of your DPSers have that buff, so that's one of the awesome buffs to note of from Sayge, but here is a table that lists all of the possible buffs that you can get from him. Eternal Quintessence. Moving on to the next topic, Eternal Quintessence, a 1-hour cooldown rune douse for Molten Core, is coming to Phase 3. Not much to say other than this will save you lots of time traveling back and forth to Duke Hydraxis and Ashara each week to replenish your douse. With this douse it has a 1-hour cooldown, so it doesn't disappear from your inventory, you just have to wait for the cooldown. The only prerequisites are you must have the Hands of Enemy quest completed, and be revered with the Hydraxian Waterlords to get yourself one of these. I have a video guide as well as a written WOWHEAD guide on this that I've linked below. Feel free to check it out if you'd like to learn more about the Hydraxian Waterlords. New reputation rewards. Let's move on to the unlocking of new reputation rewards. This includes items from the Argent Dawn, Timbermaw Hold, and the Thorium Brotherhood. Starting with the Argent Dawn, most notably I would say is the plus 24 to Bracer healing enchant that's becoming available at Revered status. The rest of the reputation rewards are as follows. Starting with Honored Reputation, plans for Girdle of the Dawn, Blacksmithing. We've also got a leatherworking pattern called Dawn Treaders. We've got a tailoring recipe called Argent Boots. We've got a first aid, powerful anti-venom, and the last thing in Honored is Enchant Bracer with mana regeneration, so that's plus 4 mana every 5 seconds to your Bracer. Now the Revered rewards are Pattern Gloves of the Dawn, those are Blacksmithing recipe. We've also got Golden Mantle of the Dawn, that's a leatherworking recipe. We've got Pattern Argent Shoulders, that's a tailoring recipe. And finally, we've got that Enchant Bracer healing that I mentioned, plus 24 healing to your Bracer. And that wraps up all the new patterns that are coming to the Argent Dawn in Phase 3. Now, let's move on to Timbermaw Hold. I have a video guide as well as a written WOWHEAD guide on this that I've linked below. Feel free to check it out if you'd like to learn more about Timbermaw Hold. These reputation rewards begin at Honored and include: at Honored Reputation, you get an enchanting recipe which adds plus 15 agility to a one-handed weapon, which is really awesome and is going to be high in demand once this recipe becomes available. Next is a leatherworking recipe called Might of the Timbermaw, which is a leather strength belt, followed by Wisdom of the Timbermaw, which is a tailoring recipe. Then Heavy Timbermaw belt, it's a blacksmithing recipe. And into Revered, we've got Mantle of the Timbermaw, which is a tailoring recipe. We've got Timbermaw Brawlers, leatherworking recipe, and plans for Heavy Timbermaw boots, which is another blacksmithing recipe. So that covers the Honored and Revered reputation rewards that are coming with the Timbermaw Hold in Phase 3. Alright, and moving on to the Thorium Brotherhood, we've got quite a lot of recipes that are unlocking in Phase 3. Starting at Friendly, we've got a formula that teaches you how to enchant a weapon with plus 15 strength. Under Honored, we've got plans for Dark Iron Helm, Blacksmithing. We've got formula enchant weapon with Mighty Spirit. We've also got a pattern for Lava Belt, that is a leatherworking recipe. And finally, we've got a pattern for Flare Core Robe, which is a tailoring recipe. It's a cloth robe with damage and healing, with a lot of stamina and fire resist. Pretty nice. Moving on to Revered, we've got a lot of recipes for Revered. We've got Black Amnesty, we've got Black Fury, we've got Dark Iron Gauntlets. These are all blacksmithing plans. We've also got Enchant Weapon Mighty Intellect, enchant a weapon to increase your intellect by plus 22. We've also got Pattern Molten Belt, Corehound Belt, and Chromatic Gauntlets. Those are all leatherworking recipes. And finally, we've got the pattern for Flare Core Leggings, which is a tailoring recipe. And finally, at Exalted, we've got blacksmithing plans for Dark Iron Boots, that's for an armor smith. We've got plans for the Ebon Hand, that is a Master Hammersmith recipe, and Nightfall, which is a Master Axesmith blacksmithing recipe. And on the topic of Nightfall, you may have heard this being discussed a lot, but Nightfall is a two-handed axe, 3.5 weapon speed. The chance on hit is that spell damage taken by the target is increased by 15% for 5 seconds. So having one person in your raid with this weapon could be integral to increasing your spell damage. I mean, 15% more damage for 5 seconds on a boss is going to make an incredible impact. You'll probably see that most guilds will have somebody dedicated to using Nightfall on boss fights just to increase the overall spellcasting DPS. Level 50 class quests. So moving on to the Sunken Temple class quests, head on over to your class trainer to begin your level 50 class quest. These quests eventually lead you into the Sunken Temple. I'm not going to walk you through each quest because there are guides out there, but I encourage you to check out the rewards for your particular class. Some of the rewards are quite nice, including the Enamored Water Spirit for Shaman, which is basically like having an extra mana tide totem. We've got Devil Sore Eye for Hunters, which is an incredible boost to attack power. We've got Diamond Flask for Warriors, plus 75 strength for 1 minute. That's practically the duration of a boss fight, so that's an incredible boost as well. So definitely do your research and see if your class reward is an upgrade for you. Blackwing Lair. And finally, last but most exciting for me, is Blackwing Lair is coming out in Phase 3. This includes a new raid, new bosses, new loot, the ability to complete a Tier 2 dungeon set. Players who have received both bindings from Molten Core can now craft Thunderfury by collecting Elementium ore and learning the recipe. I mean, how awesome is that going to be to start seeing players with freaking Thunderfury walking around? I have a YouTube video and a WOWHEAD guide on crafting of Thunderfury as well, so be sure to check that out if you're curious to see the process. There's so many exciting things with the release of BWL. I've been checking out some BWL gear, and it's such a nice jump up from the Molten Core gear available right now. It's pretty crazy. I think it's a very exciting time for Classic in that regard, and we still have a lot to look forward to. I've been preparing by farming Dire Maul East on my paladin non-stop, collecting herbs and crafting potions and whatnot. The prices of herbs have gone way up lately, so if you have the ability to farm herbs, I highly recommend it. Also, make friends with an alchemist if you're not one, because certain potions are going up as well. My best recommendation is to check in with your guild to see what their plans are for BWL. Don't be afraid to ask how you could best prepare. Most guilds should provide you with an Onyxia scale cloak. It's needed for the 3 Drake fights in there, and it's also included in the final boss with Nefarian himself. Also find out what kind of consumables they're recommending. Obvious ones are health and mana potions, food buffs, demonic runes, dark runes for casters, and so on. But your guild may also ask you to flask up, and as we all know, flasks could be very costly. So basically, in short, make sure your pockets are prepared for BWL. They may also require movement pots such as free action potions and resistance potions such as greater shadow protection potion and greater fire protection potion as well. So definitely check in with your guild if they're planning to raid BWL, and don't be afraid to ask how you can best prepare. Oh, and one last thing, don't forget to complete your BWL attunement quest by killing the Scarshield Quartermaster outside of Blackrock Spire. And with that, I'm gonna wrap up another edition of my What to Expect series. If you'd like to take a short trip down recent memory lane, you could check out my What to Expect in Phases 1 and 2 videos. To learn more about Timbermaw Hold and the Hydraxian Waterlords, I have reputation videos on those as well. And lastly, I also have a guide on how to craft Thunderfury. I'd like to thank all of our patrons who have just started supporting us. We just created a Patreon, so feel free to check that out in the description below. Patreon.com/WARCRAFTBREW. Links to all the socials as well in the description below. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube. Thank you again for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you soon. And good luck in BWL.